Hi, everyone. This is Caroline from Fiat Integrative Health in Franklin, Tennessee, and you're listening to the Fiat Health Podcast. We believe that now more than ever, the healthcare industry has become a place of confusion. And over the years, we have been asked countless questions about what true health and integration for the whole person looks like. Join us every other week as we explore topics ranging from primary care and women's health to counseling and spiritual health. We're so glad you're here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fiat Health Podcast. My name is Caroline, and today I am joined with Dr. Ed. How are you, Dr. Ed?
Good. Good to see you. It's great to be back. It's been, I think, a month since our last one.
Yeah, probably.
That's right.
Time flies.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, today we are going to talk about peptides.
My favorite topic.
Is it?
It actually is. I think it's a fascinating area. I remember first learning about peptides, rather embarrassingly. The first time I looked through a microscope was when I was in pre-med. Now, microscopes had been invented prior to that. And I was actually given the chance to when I was in high school. I went to the high school seminary. There was a microscope in the seminary, a singular one. I just happened to get through biology without ever having to look through it. And so...
How do you do that?
I'm not quite sure, but I did. I was successfully did that, just like I got through med school without having taken calculus beforehand. So first time I looked through the microscope was when I was actually doing pre-med, and I remember looking through the microscope and seeing two of everything and having to close one eye. And then I looked at the person next to me and they were doing the same thing. And it turns out we were both kind of what they used to refer to as alternative students in pre-med, i.e. we didn't take the normal route to become doctors. But that's when I learned about peptides and amino acids and the whole structure of protein. So it's kind of a fond area for me.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Okay. So obviously peptides are like hot topic. Everybody's like, either they're awesome or like they're the worst thing ever. There's like so much varying opinions out there. A lot of people have asking us like, are you guys going to do peptides? So give us the lay of the land, because I know we've touched on peptides before in a previous podcast, and now things have changed because it's July, and in the course of a month, things changed. So give us the lay of the land where everything's at, and then kind of where we're going to go with peptides at Fiat.
So first, what are peptides? And the way I like to explain peptides is think of letters, words, and paragraphs as an analogy for amino acids, peptides, and proteins. So amino acids are like the letters. By themselves, they usually don't make much sense. When you combine them together, you can make singular words, and a singular word has meaning. And that would be like a peptide. You take amino acids, you put them together, and you can make a peptide. Well, when you take multiple peptides, i.e. multiple words, and you put them together, you can make a paragraph. And paragraphs can be amazingly complex or amazingly simple, but that's what proteins are. So amino acids make peptides, peptides make proteins. Peptides in the body are one of the body's best ways of sending messages. And not only just messages, but messages with intent to do something. So a peptide that everyone's heard of is insulin. Insulin was one of the first peptides that was discovered and manufactured outside of the body in a lab to be put back in the body and used to do something. And so what does insulin do? Insulin is instrumental in the metabolism of sugar. Mm-hmm. So our bodies love to have our sugar stay at a very small range. It doesn't like to go much higher than 110 and doesn't like to go much lower than 80. And our body really focuses and uses insulin to maintain that level. And the more sugar we eat, the higher that sugar wants to go. And then our body releases tons of insulin to bring that sugar back into that very strict range. Mm-hmm. That's an example of a peptide. And so why are we talking about peptides? What's all the news about peptides? Well, today is July 22nd when we're recording this. On July 23rd and July 24th, there's a meeting taking place And the meeting is the Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee. This committee is a group of scientists who come together and they decide what should be considered a category 2, or rather unsafe peptide or medication that hasn't been studied enough and has lots of risks around it and should not be open to the general public to be used through a compounding pharmacy with a prescription. That's category 2. Category 1 is these are medications that are considered less dangerous, but still require the prescription of a prescribing clinician and can be manufactured and produced in a compounding pharmacy. And so this Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee, they're going to meet on the 23rd and review about 4 different peptides. And then on the 24th, another 3 different peptides, and decide whether they should be considered a category 1. Now, all 7 of these peptides have been moved from the category 2, unsafe for any use in compounding pharmacies, only research purposes. And they've already been removed from that category 2. Now they're kind of in limbo. And really what RFK Jr. has been doing is he considers and has a movement considering these peptides be more of like supplements and should be maintained more similarly as supplements rather than some of the high-risk medications that are prescribed and monitored. So that's kind of where we're at. Earlier this year, these 7 were moved from a category 2 to a limbo to be considered on the 23rd and 24th.
Okay. And I know we had talked about this a little bit last time with peptides, but it created this kind of gray market where people can get them because you can get them. It's not the black market technically, but it's from like these research facilities, kind of.
Oh, yes. So what is the difference between a black market and a gray market? It's kind of like, what's the difference between a venial sin and little sin? I think it's a matter, it's all depending on who's doing the sinning and who's talking about the sin. So a gray market is where people would consider, well, it's not really that bad. It's not really that illegal. So I'm just going to go ahead and I know online, or I know this guy, perhaps a gym friend, can get me some of these quote unquote peptides. So why is that so bad? Well, it's all in the COA. And what a COA stands for in this context is the Certificate of Analysis. So you want to use peptides that come along with a certificate of analysis saying that this truly is the peptide that they're telling you it is, and that it's in the right concentration and in the right format.
Right.
There's 2 basic formats that these peptides come in. There's the free-base format, which is really literally the most pure freeze-dried version of it, usually less stable, but is more pure in the form. And so when you look at, let's say one of the peptides that we're going to look at is the MOTS peptide. If it was in the freeze-dried version or free-base version versus the salt version or the acetate version, they add salts to it for a preservative aspect. And so 5 milligrams of the free-base versus 5 milligrams of this acetate would be slightly different. But the peptides they're looking at over the next 7 days they're both formats they're looking at. And the acetate or the salt format is what the ones that are usually the compounding pharmacies are using because it's just simply much easier, much more stable proteins to use. Or peptides, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the gray market basically is like, there's no certificate of analysis. You don't know what you're getting. And I know there's been some research on like people who have done third-party testing and shown that a lot of these gray market peptides aren't really great quality. You're not actually getting what you're paying for. And so now what's going to happen is it's very likely that they're going to approve these peptides in the next 2 days and move them out of that category 2 into the category 1, which will allow compounding pharmacies to make them, which will also allow a certificate of analysis so that we know what you're getting is, good and pure and all of that and effective. And so then where does that put us? So we're now going to be in a place where we could use peptides. So what do we do?
And it's very important to look at this because as peptides become available and we decide a partner pharmacy, a compounding pharmacy to use, and we get those certificates of analyses, what we truly want to do is begin to identify the right patient for the right peptide. And this isn't like a multivitamin where you can choose whichever multivitamin you want, or it's more specialized. So like does everyone need berberine? No, right? Does everyone need inositol? No. It really there are some certain characteristics that fit each one. So I'll kind of dive into what are the 7 different ones that they're going to be looking at. And this just begins the process. As these are moved to category 1, this committee will meet probably quarterly and decide if more and more will be added. And what I really like about this, and why is this exciting, why is this important, it really begins to move treatment with these peptides, the most common way our bodies know how to signal different repair mechanisms and induce, like, for example, oxytocin. It is the signal for bonding, right? We can start to take advantage of these peptides and actually elevate the health of all of our, not just Fiat patients, but all of America. What normally these peptides are behind is a huge patent barrier and then a huge cost barrier. And that's what this whole program is trying to remove, these barriers so that we can start to utilize these. So, and naturally, our body, there's over 7,000 peptides that we have already identified that float around in our body, but they quickly are dissipated or destroyed. So the signals are very short. So the peptides that we're talking about aren't the exact image of what we have in our body, because if we gave it, they would last anywhere from 2 seconds to 7 minutes, and then they're degraded and they're gone from our body. Essentially, well, they're not gone, but the active form is deactivated. So they are manipulated in a lab by different mechanisms to make them last longer and have stronger effects. And that's what truly makes these peptides very powerful. So the first day, on the 23rd of July, they're going to look at 4 of them. And I have to look at these because I haven't memorized which ones they're doing. BPC 157. This is a repair peptide. It's really focused on ulcerative colitis. Was the first one it was looked at. So it's looking at gut repair, intestinal repair. But then they've also discovered that it helps repair of tissues outside of the gut as well.
And is it kind of like non-discriminatory, right? Like if I were to take BP 157, it's kind of just going to be for everything that...
Not necessarily everything, but it certainly is for tissue repairs. So I don't know the research on nerve repairs. I don't know the research on certain overall organ repairs. So tissues make up organs, but we know it does repair at the tissue level. So BPC 157 is one that they'll be evaluating. One that's usually combined with is TB 500. So TB 500 is another tissue repair. This is more around wound healing. So not only surface skin wound, but think of your knee injuries and think of a tendon injury, etc. So it really begins to, with the manipulation of the peptide, last longer in your body and actually can repair these tissues. Another one is KPV. This is also wound healing and anti-inflammatory effects. And then the fascinating one that I really like is the MOTS. This is a mitochondrial peptide. So it's made within the mitochondria. And this really actually helps not with tissue repair, but with insulin sensitivity and with obesity. And on the gray/black market, it's used in combination with GLP-1s for the individuals who are suffering from obesity, insulin sensitivity, hyperlipidemia, all of the cascade of issues that come with that. And in combination, it's been demonstrated to do quite a bit of assistance with patients moving out of that metabolic syndrome effect, which is in many ways a death sentence over a decade. So that's the first day. That's their first day of review. The second day also gets into some fascinating areas. And this is around brain health with CMAX or CMAX, SEMAX. And then 2 that are really more focused on sleep initiation, people with insomnia, or individuals who are traveling a lot and who are having broken sleep. I don't know if anybody who has interrupted sleep at night.
Never heard of that.
Solid 9 hours every night. Isn't that
What is
about
that?
what our average Fiat family gets, right?
Yeah.
So that can add up over, this sleep issues can add up over weeks, months, and can become very serious. Think of individuals who have nightmares and are unable to, they keep waking up and now they don't even want to go to sleep. And that whole cycle happens over and over again.
Awful.
There are wonderful peptides that have been studied in this area. Also have been studied in opioid withdrawal.
Okay.
Metabolic has been used in that as well. So on that second day, it's the three. It's amideltide, Semax, and a peptalon. All three of those more in sleep, and then the Semax is really about cognition. And that, I think, is going to start to open up a lot of treatments for patients.
So questions that naturally come to mind would be, if I start a peptide, will I forever have to be on this peptide? Because I know a lot of people with GLP-1s have had that experience where they start a GLP-1 maybe, and they see really great improvement. And then as soon as they come off the GLP-1, they gain the weight back and their insulin resistance comes back. So how does that work with these peptides?
I kind of liken it to insulin. So insulin does its job and then it doesn't go away. There's always this background of our natural insulin. When I look at individuals who are using GLP-1s for significant weight loss, the effects of this are very similar to individuals who have lost weight without GLP-1s. Okay. The majority of those people gain that weight back. But here's the difficult part. When you lose weight, it's very similar on a GLP-1 versus losing weight normally, other than GLP-1s are much more consistent than individuals who aren't. But the weight loss is not just fat. It is both fat and muscle. With a peptide called semaglutide, it's much more common to lose closer to 50-50. And with tirzepatide, the next generation, there's less muscle loss, and retatrutide, which is the next one coming out, most likely will even have less, but it still is muscle loss. So when you have an individual who loses a lot of weight, they've lost a lot of muscle. And when they gain the weight back, it's usually not because they went to the gym. Okay? It's usually not muscle. It's fat. So you're losing muscle, gaining fat. You're losing muscle again when you go through another crash diet and you're gaining fat. So do you have to be on it for life? Not necessarily, but the majority of people tend to gain their weight back either way. So would it be safer to be on this versus gaining the weight back? Absolutely. And if you ask the individuals, would they want to be on this or simply have the risk of rolling the dice where it's, the house always wins is the saying. The weight always wins. Not always, but the majority of the time it does win. So will they have to be on it for life? Not necessarily, but if it is, it's a better choice than having the consequences of the obesity, which is the insulin resistance, which leads to the atherosclerotic breakdown or the buildup in your arteries, causing blockage. The dementia, now we're realizing that's a, referring to it as diabetes type 3.
Sure.
So insulin resistance is very much associated with many types, not all, but many types of dementia.
So is that the case with these other peptides too, like GLP-1s?
Right. So when we're treating, let's talk about a tissue injury. A tissue injury is not looking normally at let's say, chronic disease like obesity. So it is more of an episodic use.
Right.
So if you have the injury or you have an injury that occurred a long time ago, it still is not fully repaired, and use this to repair that, you don't have to be on this to continue to repair it. Once the repair is done, it's done. And then you can come off of it. Same thing with insomnia. Most people, when they get into a cycle of insomnia, require something to break the cycle. And once the cycle is broken, will they have to be on it every time, or every night or going through infusion? No, not necessarily.
Sure.
Will the cycle come back? Most likely it will.
Yeah.
And they may have to go through another treatment. So the ones that they're looking at of these, most of these are more of a maintenance. So I have small injuries. I want to come in and get maintenance peptides to take care of these small injuries that are occurring. But some of them truly are just one time and you may never have to use it again.
Yeah. Like I think of like the gut repair, like you were talking about, the BPC 157. I think obviously totally multifactorial. How did you end up with that leaky gut, for instance, in the first place. And so it could be that, you do repair the gut lining and then it just you're back in the same place in 6 months because you actually didn't address any underlying, say you have an overgrowth of yeast or bacteria or something like that, and that didn't go addressed, right? Is that kind of similar?
Exactly.
So another question I think that's natural to think is like, what are the risks? And obviously I think we don't know a ton. I don't think there's not a ton of studies, and there may not be a ton of studies done on these. And maybe you can explain that too.
And again, I liken this to the unfortunate state that we're in with supplements. There's not a lot of studies on our supplements. Why? That's not where the money is.
Right.
And where the money is where the research money goes.
Yeah.
Even in our government, which hopefully we're slowly going to start to change that. I believe it was in Florida where they're dedicating $200 or $250 million of research to these areas which don't gain a lot of money but have great potential benefits for a patient.
Right.
So I would say that the real focus around these and the safety of these is going to grow as they become released to the masses. And that's what we're looking at. Are there any studies? Every one of these have studies.
Yeah.
They're not very large, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, multiple thousands of patients in them.
Long-term.
Exactly.
10 years, 20 years, all that. Yeah.
Right. So every one of these will come with specific warnings and risks that have to be accepted by the patient before taking them. And that will be included in the actual agreement to use these because there are certain unknowns we have. And I like the attitude that the FDA is slowly taking, that these are more along the lines of supplements. They should be allowed to the masses, that they are considered safe because we've done research for the safety specifically. And now we can start to see a more robust response that's actually includes COAs and is available on a much larger scale for us to start to monitor.
So would all 7 of these do have some safety data to them in terms of like side effects?
They have to. For the pharmacy committee to be able to discern is it category 2 versus category 1, they have to have some studies that demonstrate the safety enough to move to that level 1. So that category 1. That category 1 doesn't mean it's FDA certified or FDA approved. It simply means that it's been considered safe by a scientific body to be utilized by compounding pharmacies, still with a lot of gates, right?
Yeah.
The gate is you need to go to a clinician, make a relationship with that clinician, have the clinician identify a diagnosed disease process in you, and then write an actual prescription. And on the other side, you have to have pharmacies, like the 503A is the smaller individual compounding pharmacies. 503Bs are manufacturing huge, not huge, but very large facilities. It's on that side, now they're being able to purchase in bulk. And when they purchase in bulk, they get their COAs of where they're purchasing it from. And then we get COAs also from the actual compounding pharmacy. So
okay. Yeah, so it's not supplement in the sense of like, it's going to be over the counter and anybody can use it however they want.
Exactly. These certainly have a lot more gates to them.
Yeah, and then 2, who would you say is like good candidates for this? Because my thought is similar to the way we approach GLP-1s is, it's not probably the first thing necessarily you pull out of your toolbox. And it might be in certain cases, depending on the patient presentation, but it can't be done flippantly, and it can't be done without also acknowledging that other lifestyle and dietary factors need to be considered.
Absolutely. And that's how we approach medicine here at Fiat. First, we want to know what is the experience of the patient. So we take the time, which is more than 6.3 minutes.
The average doctor visit.
So we have to take the time to know the patient and not just know their circumstances and their diagnoses, but also what is their goals? What are they looking for?
Right.
We also need to make the diagnosis of it. But our first step is always looking at what does diet, what is lifestyle, what does history, how does this affect that whole disease process and getting better? And then if necessary, we can move to supplements. And even if necessary beyond that, this would fall into that category of medications. So are we at the point that we now need to do a medication for this? You will see a lot of like peptide in a box, like Jack in a
like
box.
testosterone in a box.
Exactly. Not warning people that, honestly, this is completely shutting off your testosterone production naturally, that your testes are going in a box and they are closing down, and we may have to wake them up with super strong medications if we can wake them up. So this is very similar in that we will take all the steps ahead of that to decide who's the right candidate for these medications.
Yeah, and it's who's the right candidate. And then, what else are we looking at? It's just like such a big picture and not just get it. I've just seen, and maybe you can speak to this too even more, like testosterone's a great example, but there's other things where people will go and get something like this from somebody. And then, there's so many effects that they're not realizing. And that person isn't looking at the whole picture. And it's detrimental. It's and dangerous, in my opinion. Like, I don't think people should be allowed to do that, but they do. And yay for our free country.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think because I guess getting to the point that we will provide peptides, like we will utilize them in our clinic. So what is that going to look like for people?
So again, this is why we created this atmosphere for our patients.
Yeah.
These are not one-off solutions. These are a part of the holistic journey, and they have to fit into that holistic journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will be offering them here as soon as this whole cascade of going to category 1 and then the compounding pharmacies have it, and then we find the right partner. But for us here, this is just going to begin to fold into the normal way we take care of our patients.
Right.
What we will do is, as we always try to do, let's make it as efficient and easy and cost-effective for our patients to actually receive these.
Right. Because no insurance will cover these.
Nope.
Right. Because they're not FDA approved.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so maybe one day, do you think they'd ever be covered by insurance?
There's a whole... what I heard was, do you think one day insurances are going to have to completely change the approach that they have? Absolutely, yes. Yes, I do think that is going to... No, I don't think that peptides are going to be covered anytime soon.
No time soon.
These type. But do I think that insurance is going to change? Absolutely. And there's something that I do say, and I say this to a lot of my patients now, and I truly mean this. And this is purely Ed Glenn's guessing here. My crystal ball says that if you're under 35, your average lifespan will be 100.
Okay.
And so I would be planning my retirements to live to 100. Now, lifespan is not health span. Lifespan is pure numbers. Yep. So you may reach 100, but when you reach 70, you may have been in the wheelchair and you may have hit 71 or 72 with dementia, but your body will live to 100. So what our goal now is focusing on how do we optimize that health span and be able to allow you to have your mobility, your cognition, your social circle beyond that 100 years. And peptides are going to be a large part of that movement. These are just 7. Remember, there are 7,000 we know of that are circulating the body. This so 7, I imagine, will be 10x in 3 years.
Okay. And peptides, I think one thing we touched on last time, but not this time, is that they cannot be owned by a pharmaceutical company. Is that right?
No, but yes. So no peptide by itself that is humanly found in the body can be patented. But remember, what they're doing is they're manipulating that peptide to have stronger effects that last longer and are more stable. The process by which they do make them live longer and stay more stable, that can be patented. But I think as we begin to rapidly open these doors, it decreases the chance that somebody's going to grab and patent and prevent anyone else from encircling that. Now, I firmly believe that the U.S. is so advanced in healthcare from a new drug standpoint, simply because we've created the atmosphere that can occur.
Right.
However, just like so many things, we started with a great idea, like a government started as a great idea.
Right.
And then bureaucracy sets in, and then special interest sets in. Same exact thing has occurred with medications now. And our hope is that moving these peptides to a supplement level, we take our eyes off the pot of gold and let's make it look at the pot of health span. And that this actually now becomes a movement for the health of all of us here as citizens. versus this becomes a focus on let's get rich
Make
quick.
money. And as far as we know, then the result of that is that there probably will not be huge, large scale randomized controlled trials with these. And it's kind of an experimental, let's see, what are you doing over there with peptides? What are you seeing in your clinic with peptides?
Exactly what we hear on podcasts with multivitamins and supplements and minerals today. This is the exact same thing. And is that non-scientific? No, that is absolutely scientific. It's just not on the scale yet. But if you look at how much information gets exchanged nowadays on podcasts, on YouTube, the speed at which we're being able to communicate this and our experiences back and forth, that does build up for us a level of science that can start to say, you know what, I think we're ready for a randomized controlled trial on this. And that's happening a lot faster than it used to.
Yay. So exciting. Awesome. Well, we're excited about Are Peptides. I'm sure by the time this airs, we'll almost be there.
I'm sure we will almost be there.
We will see. Well, it's been a joy always, Dr. Ed, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. To learn more, you can visit our website at fiathealth.org. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. This helps make the podcast easier to find. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out, ask a question, or suggest a topic for a future show, send us an email at media@fiathealth.org. God bless.